Guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp of the Limp, and I'm here finally with some Onus, Traianus. Hope I'm saying that correctly. It is the card battling game where the cards are actually the units. I really love how they've orchestrated this game. It really feels kind of like Total War was brought down into a card game. Now, it's not the entirety of Total War. It's like the battle. I might have some background footage from old Heir of Carthage. I love watching his combat videos. But in Total War, just in case you haven't played the game, you probably should have if you're watching this video. It has it to where you have your line of troops, whatever types of troops you have, depending on the different era of the game that you're playing, where you have your melee units, your cavalry, your skirmishers, your artillery, archers, whoever's doing the fighting. And they're going to be in that line formation. They're going to move up, and you're trying to flank your enemy and rock, paper, scissors, hit them with the type of unit that's best suited to counteract their unit, right? So your spearmen want to attack their cavalry to take them down. Use your archers to soften up their heavier infantry as they're coming in so they don't get to charge your guys, right? All of this type stuff. Well, plenty of games have tried to bring this down into a tabletop setting, depending on how they've done it with miniatures or the like, counters, right? And it's a hard thing to translate really well to a tabletop setting. And I think Onus Traianus has done a decent job of actually simulating this, right? Because the cards simulate the units, and a card is a pretty decent rectangle, right? It fits. And the units are there, and they have even included segments for the fact that the units can spread out, right? So you can have a longer front line. There's counter pieces that you can put on the end of the card to signify that when you come charging into the enemy, you're going to try to surround them. You're going to try to envelop them, and you're going to come in on the flank, or you're going to hit them from the rear, and there's bonuses for that, or you can hit them with javelins as they're coming charging in. They've really thought about everything, and I like the way the game works. Now, when it comes to solitaire play, I'm not a whole... I don't really like the way that they've done it, just to be quite blunt about it. But I am going to do some of my own house ruling. So we're going to jump down to the table here, play a little bit of a historical scenario, let you guys see the game play in action. And I'll explain what I've changed up, because they do have a solo mode. But what they've really done is a lot of work into how to create your own scenario and rolling off on stuff like that. And the rules for the solitaire play itself was basically like, do what the enemy should do, and really that was kind of it. And I can kind of understand that, because there's not really a good way to solitaire rule this out. There's just too many variables when it comes to a game like this, and all the different things that can happen. So I really think they, in a way, did the best that they could with that. It gave you a way to set up a scenario, right, when it came to generals and units and the like, where you didn't necessarily pick the units that the enemy was going to be using. That part, stop there. We're good. It's post that where things are a little bit different. So for me, I am going to be changing that up. I'm just house ruling it for myself. Long story short, the way units activate in this game, there's whole order cards and everything. For solitaire play, we're just going to wash all that and go to a back and forth system. One side will activate a unit, other side will activate a unit. Boom, boom, boom. That way we can eliminate a lot of the confusion and the mess that comes with that. It'll streamline things, and that way we can use the order cards, which have orders and events on them. We can solely focus on those, using them for events, and not worry about anything else on it. Won't get confusing. It'll be easy. We can jump right into the gameplay itself, which is really where I think this game shines, is how the combat and the units interact when they actually get stuck in, when they're fleeing, when their morale breaks, when the general's giving his bonuses, when the There's even rules for elephants trampling their opponents as they flee, right? So the elephant's morale breaks, it'll trample their own units. God, that's awesome. If you have the terrain expansion pack as well, there is rules when it comes to having fortresses, right? So you can have a fortress siege battle in this game like you would see in a game like Total War, right? Where there's walls, there's towers, there's ballista, battering rams, that whole nine, right? The whole thing that you like there in Total War, the game. You can have it here. And I got to stop saying Total War because people are going to think this is Total War. It's not. It's completely different. But it's really close to taking the battle from that and turning it into a card tabletop game, right? I really think it works well in this setting. Anyway, let's pop down to the table. I'll stop yapping and let you guys see how it works. All right, so here we are down at the table, and you guys can see I've got a couple of armies set up over here. We've got Rome on the right, and what is it? Macedonia, I think, is here on the left. I think I'm right. I'm gonna have to check that one. Yes, it is Macedonia. This is this battle. The Battle of Sino something. Rome versus Macedonia. They're real simple battle, charging at each other. The only thing is Rome did have some elephants. I wanted to include some elephants in this, and it goes into some of the historical blurb. There's actually a lot of history in here, huge number of battles. I've got to give it to them on that, and it goes here onto some of the special rules and the amount of points and all the good stuff that each side does get. The one thing that threw me off is I was unable to find Flamius, the Roman general. For some reason, he's not in my box. I looked in both boxes I had. I could not find him. So either he wasn't included or I'm missing him. I don't know. Something's off on that. So I just picked a random general to throw in there instead. There are a few hills here, and Rome got to place a couple of small forests that they added onto the board. That's what these pieces are here. And both sides are trying to cause at least 50% casualties or kill the general. Good stuff. And then there are reinforcements they can get if you're playing a campaign that will stretch on. And here on the back, you guys can actually see there's a huge number of different campaigns, scenarios that are included. This is actually really thick scenario book that comes with this. And if you were smart enough to get both boxes, the expansion pack and the main box, you get two of these campaign books. So a huge number of scenarios, huge number of troops. That's one of the biggest things that I like about this game is the fact that you can have so many troops because they're cards. It doesn't matter, you know, like you're not printing a mini. You're just, boom, here's a card. And it's got all the stats that you need right there, a little picture of them, all that good stuff. So let's go over real quick what this stuff means. Points here on the left, right? So that's real easy to understand. You will notice as we play through that there's actually fewer Macedonian troops. Rome has a handful of more cards than they do, but their troops are better, right? So they have fewer better troops, and Rome has a larger number of just mediocre troops. Then, as we're looking across the card here, we've got melee stats, range stats, defensive stats, the morale, and hit points, and movement factor. And then these little circles up here, these are actually special abilities. So like these cavalry can go into a special formation. That's what that blue thing is. And basically they can go into a wedge and charge the enemy. They get a bonus when they're conducting a charge if they're in a special formation. There's other special formations, things like the phalanx or squares that either give you defensive bonuses or bonuses like you get to attack first in combat. That's a really good one. That's why you want to use a phalanx. All the different type of stuff you would do and this type of combat can be simulated by the different stances that you go into. Now, you can even do a force march, which gets you extra movement, but it makes you very, very vulnerable if you are caught out in the open. If you get attacked melee or ranged while you're in a force march stance, you will take some damage. And just to show you some others, again, here are some Velatites, I guess. You see they have different stats. These have ranged abilities. The first number is their hit and damage, and the second number, that parentheses number, is the range. And when it's talking about range in this game, everything is a measuring unit. It comes with a bunch of these little measuring sticks. I like that. And you can see how they're measured off here. So one movement unit, right? One range unit, one movement unit is this. All right, let's get it focused in here. See how it's got 1, 2, 3. So each one of these measuring sticks is roughly 3 measuring units. So if a cavalry unit has a movement factor of 6, that means they can effectively move 2 of these. Okay. Now, of course, that is barring certain things. Certain formations will slow you down. If you do certain types of pivots or movements, turning around, that's all going to take movement points away from you. So as an example, if you want a unit to pivot, they can pivot on each one of their corners to aim in a different direction. Okay. You can pivot up to 90 degrees, but that 90 degrees costs you 1 movement unit. So if our cavalry were here and they wanted to face that direction, right, turn to the right, they can do that, but that's going to be 1 of their movement units. Or if they turn around the other way, that's going to be 2. So for every 90 that you spin around, it's going to be 1 extra movement point. And you can't do a zigzag thing as you're moving. So a unit can't go forward, pivot some, go forward, turn, and then come back this way. You're not doing this. So basically, they have to kind of stick with whatever their general direction is. They can't go crazy. Also, for the most part, this game does not have stacking. There is a few rare circumstances where cards will overlap, but for the most part, you cannot have cards overlapping enemy or friendly. Now, you can move through friendly troops, but you cannot move through enemy troops. Enemy troops obviously going to stop you. Now, last key thing when we're looking at these cards, now this is going to be a little bit harder to see, so I'm trying to get it really zoomed in so you can see. But look up here. You see how there's those little white dashes right there, and it splits the front of the card into 4 sectors, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you're looking at the side, you see there's little dashes there as well. And this is only 1 and 2. It actually is not 3. This little piece here doesn't count. Effectively, that's the flank of the unit. Here at the rear, it has the same thing. And that has to do when your units are getting into combat with the enemy, the amount of sides touching affects things like how many dice you're going to throw. And basically whether or not you're going to envelop the enemy. So, let me actually set up a little example down here so I can show you. Okay, so let's say we had our infantry here. We've got some armed civilians, and what are these guys? What do we have here? What do we have? We have no freaking clue. Pez. We have Pez. We have some Pez here. All right. Each one of them has 4 on the front. Okay, so think of that as a line of 4. And you're going to match up in some way. Now, if they were matched up like this, that would just be simple, all right? 4 on 4, you're done. Boom. But combat's not generally going to be like that. You're going to come charging in from the side. You're going to hit them not dead on, things like that, okay? You can also extend your lines. You can choose to extend your lines out. Let's flip that around. So now we have 6 going across our front. And that basically means they're thinning up. They aren't as deep as they were, so they can spread out a little bit farther. Okay, so you have the option to do this or other types of envelopment. Now, a way to think about it is like, say our armed civilians here wanted to charge in and they hit, roughly so. You're going to line it up. Get my lines right. There it is. Now, if we were lined up like so, half and half, that means we have 2 of these off to the side. Now, you don't have to, but obviously you're going to want to envelop their flank so you get little combat bonuses. And you get a combat bonus because you're now hitting them on the flank. So these 2 pieces here are effectively coming in and hitting the side of the Pez units, okay? Now, thing is, later on, when the Pez guys activate, they can actually do the same thing. So when they activate, they could choose to come in on the flank as well to extend their combat to attack the armed civilians on their flank. And it's going to be like this no matter where you're attacking on the card, okay? And it's the same type thing if you add extended lines. So let's say, just as an example, pull these back off. Let's say our armed civilians attacked and we're not just looking at the 4 on the front, they had the extended lines, right? So they had 6 across the front. In that case, you would end up with a scenario like this. And you would actually have 1 coming around hitting them on the back, all right? Because you would have 1, 2, and then 3 for that 1 that was extended on the flank, and then this one's still here. So they would have 3 attacking on the front, 2 across the flank, and then 1 more attacking them in the rear. That's what you want to do, is kind of envelop your enemy so you get all of those attacking bonuses, hitting them in the rear, hitting them in the side, all that good stuff. You just have to be a little careful about where you're attacking, where you're making all this type stuff, because enemy units can come in, and if they attack your little tokens here, it's pretty much guaranteed damage coming on to your unit, so you want to be careful on where your envelopments are. So in short, combat is all about making those smart choices here. Now, of course, armed civilians are crap. They have 1/1, so they're pretty much useless and not a whole lot of health, weak morale. They move pretty decent at 3 for infantry, so that's not too bad. Okay, so we pulled it back out a little bit. I'm still not showing the whole lines, but we'll get into it. Let me show a couple more pieces, and we'll get the battle started. One other aspect we have is generals. You see I got Regulus here because I could not find Flamius to save my butt. I don't know where the hell he is. Generals apply a bonus to whatever troops that they're with. So this is what this represents here. They also apply a morale bonus to units that are within their influence range, which is represented by their stats. They have a leadership value as well, and then sometimes they have special abilities. Like this general, the unit that he is located in has javelins, so basically they get a short range ranged attack added to whatever their stats are, which is why I chose to put them with these Triari, because these guys are really good in melee. They're awesome. They can have a whole bunch of different special formations, especially that phalanx, which is really good, but they don't have any ranged abilities. So effectively, we get to kind of do this. You want to try to keep your general alive. Your units will take a morale penalty if your general is killed, and some scenarios will end if your general is killed as well. So each will have it. And one last little thing, there is a percentage point value here added to the top. And without getting long-winded on the math of it, that essentially reduces the amount of points that you're going to bring to the battle. He changes it by 25%, which means you lose roughly 25% of whatever you're bringing. In other words, the better the general, the more points you lose in troops that you actually get to bring, okay? And just let's see here, the Macedonian general, see his is only a plus 10%. His stats are nowhere as good as the Roman general. And then once per battle, the unit where this general is located can ignore its first morale check failure. So that's not too bad. You do not want to lose morale checks, because if you do, your units become broken. And then if they're broken and they lose a morale check, they will start to flee, and then they start running off the battlefield. Think of it again like Total War. right? Same thing. When your units break, they start taking hit point damage and all that. They'll start running away against your will, and then you have to hope that they rally so they can come back into the fight. Same thing can happen here. All right, so we've got our generals, we've got our units, we've got infantry, we've got archers, we've got cavalry, we've got elephants, we got all the good stuff. We got some forests, we got some hills here. There's some small ones that are located over here with the units. Some archers on top of those so they can have a little bit of bonus range firing since the Macedonians are defensive in this battle. Now, I told you at the beginning that we were doing something a little bit different in this one. And that has to do with the way orders are done, because orders are done using these cards. Generally, the way this game's going to be played is that leadership value that I was telling you about for your general will tell you how many of these cards that you're going to get to have. Now, the way these cards work is they're going to have orders at the top and an event at the bottom. The event can be used in a multitude of different ways we'll get into in the game itself. But generally speaking, every time you have a melee or ranged attack, there's going to be a random event drawn. So you'll draw an event and see if it affects whatever's going on. You can also play these cards during the course of the game to improve your battle, right? So if you have something going on, you want to use javelins, you need to play an event that lets you use those javelins to soften up your enemy as they're coming in. You see here, the top, when it comes to orders, it has the little foot symbol. That means it activates a unit. And this is simply just activate one unit. Some will let you activate more than one unit, some won't. And that's where I came up with a problem of how am I going to do this solitaire, because their solitaire rules have a little bit convoluted way of handling the order cards. And honestly, I just didn't like it. I thought it was a little too cumbersome for our purposes, and you're going to kind of forget how many cards am I drawing for you. I don't want to do that. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to keep it real simple. One side's going to activate a unit. Other side's going to activate a unit. One side's going to activate a unit. Other side's going to activate a unit. And we're just going to go back and forth. That's it. As far as the events go, I'm not giving myself any event cards to use because I don't want to worry about that. We will simply draw a random event every time that we need to in game, which will be for melee and ranged attacks. When those happen, we will draw the event cards as per normal. But by doing it this way, I don't have to worry about what cards the AI has. Is the AI playing any card? I don't even have to worry about the AI side. What are they doing? What are they attacking with? And I'll move them up and then draw event cards as per normal. I did get the nice, cool, special dice that came with the Kickstarter. What we're going to do is we're going to roll off here real quick and see who's going to go first. Red is for the Roman side. Blue is for Macedonia. Whoever gets the higher number is going to be the one that gets to go first. And then after that, we're just going to go back and forth. All right, so Rome is going to be starting the activations. Oh, and one last thing before I forget to show you guys. There is a nice little card here that has all the stuff that you need to know. The turn sequence and a little summary of what all of this stuff means, all these little symbols and the different formations and the little bonuses and all that good stuff that they do provide. Also, when you are setting up your troops, you can choose to set them into a specific formation when they start off, which I think I might do on some of these guys, but actually I'll probably wait because some of them are slow. 2 movement units, which is that. Let's focus in here, come on. Which is that. And if they're in like a phalanx, for example, they only get to move 1. So moving that across the board, boom, 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 boom. Yeah, it's going to be a little too slow, so we'll have to start them off a little bit faster. All right, so I will show you guys these as we get started, but one of the little things that I did notice as I was playing this game off camera was the fact that since they are cards, depending on the surface that you're on, you're going to have problems like, right, the cards slide just a little bit. And in this game, it does matter what direction they're facing. That is very important. And little things like, being just a little off can, affect stuff. So honestly, I wouldn't be too afraid to, even if you're playing with someone else, just touch your cards back to where they're supposed to be. It's going to be very easy to bump them and have it just turn just a little bit. I wouldn't get overly detailed about the millimeters. So my Velatites here, they have a movement factor of 3. I want to move them up so they can start doing some ranged attacks. Pitch some javelins, which they do have there. And they're a lighter troop anyway. I think they're only going to be able to use the javelins. But maybe we can get some stuff going. Basically, I want to get them stuck into to go after something. And yes, that's right. They're skirmishers. That little yellow symbol there, focus in, means skirmisher. In other words, they are more maneuverable. They can actually split their movement factor during different points of the turn. If I show you guys here, right now we're in the activation phase, where you determine what ones of your units are going to get activated. For us, that is changing since I'm going back and forth, right? Bear with me. The next phase goes into movement, range attacks, skirmishers, all that other good stuff, right? So your skirmishers can move and then do ranged attacks, and then where it says skirmishers, they get to move again. So that's really cool. And then flight means you're running off the board. And then end of turn, focus back in, end of turn, generally is where you would draw more cards, but I'm not having either side draw cards. So making it a little bit easier on us. These guys can go up to 3. So that's going to be what we do. And that's it. Just 1, 2, 3, right? Boom. So the Macedonians have something that is similar. They have Silois, whatever it is. Also skirmishers and javelins. So same stats as far as range, a little bit weaker with the melee abilities, but same speed. So we're going to move up these guys. And actually, I think they're the exact same points. Are they? Yeah, both of them are 50 points. The stats are very close. They have a little bit more. Let me bring it in. They have a little bit more health, but a little bit less melee ability. So close, but we'll move them in for the start of the Macedonians' turn. Now, as an FYI, when it comes to ranged attacks are not from what you would think. Honestly, when I was looking at the cards, I was thinking it would be like this, right? 45-degree angle from the front or whatever. It's actually 180 degrees, right? So draw a line across the front of this card, everything in front of it, pretty much in line of sight, but you trace your line of sight from the very center of the card. And depending on if it is traced through enemy troops or friendly troops, you can have modifiers and or have your line of sight be blocked. Like our hill up here would be blocking for a line of sight. Same for this little forest down over here. If it was traced through a troop, then it's simply a -1 modifier. Now, the cool thing about skirmishers, though, is the way that they get to move and interact in the game is, let's say they only needed just a little bit to get an opponent in range. Now, you do have to call your shots before you measure. So you can't measure to see if they're in range prior to declaring your shot. Basically, you have to estimate well. But let's say you're close and you know that you can potentially get that enemy in range. So you could move just up a little bit with your skirmishers, do your ranged attack, and then use the remaining bit of their movement points to bring them back out of range, right? That ability to move freely is awesome when it comes to skirmisher units. And they are the only units that get to move, potentially move anyway, twice in one turn. No, they don't get double the movement points. They have whatever movement points they have. They just have to, they have the ability to divide them up however they want. And something quite nice, they actually included little tokens that have one or half on them, because in this game you can go by halves, right? So half a movement unit value, and you can use those to keep track of how much of a movement factor a unit's used. So if they've used one movement factor out of the 3 they have, you just put 1 token on there so you know that they have 2 movement units remaining. All right, but we're going to pause here since I got out most of the overview. I know a lot of this I was just talking and less gaming, but I wanted to tell you guys all the specifics of the game. Next video we will pick up and it'll be all straight combat. We're going to have our line of Roman troops. Let me actually tilt it back so you guys can see. It goes on for a little ways back there, all the way up to the back. Now, I would actually suggest a larger battlefield, especially depending on the size of the scenario that you're playing. If you do like a 500 or 1,000 point game, you could probably do it on what I'm doing, which is a 3x3. 3x3 is about the smallest I would use for a game, right? I really think a 4x4 is probably better, or even a rectangle, right? So like a, what we say, 3x6, 3x5, give you a good sized battlefield. In other words, yes, it can feel too small, but I don't really think you're going to have a problem going too big. You want to have that open battlefield so you can have the maneuver warfare going on. All right, but anyway, when we come back, we'll pick back up with the Roman troops, rather, and they're going to push forward. And again, it's just trying to slaughter each side to where they take out either half the troops or the opposing generals, which are both there in the center. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to put them down below. Otherwise, I will catch you guys in the next one. Y'all take care.